because this week we saw ICE have been kidnapping and killing and disappearing people, humans, for months now. We know that there are hundreds that have died in custody. We know that there are thousands that have disappeared where their records have just been erased. We cannot find them. We don't know where they are. We don't know if they're in a detention facility. We don't know if they're in, Alligator, Alcatraz. We don't know if they've already gone off to another country, Ecuador, or somewhere else. We have no idea. But we saw this week the shooting of a white American woman and killing of her by an ICE agent. And this is a turning point. This is definitely a turning point. This is what happened in Minneapolis this week. Minnesota being considered a blue state, i.e. a Democratic state. Minnesota being the state where the Social Security issues with daycare centers is ongoing. In fact, Tim Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota, who was the running mate of Kamala Harris, has now said that he will not be running for a third term because he's realized that his entire job now isn't to govern Minnesota so much as to fight the federal government. We're seeing a fracturing of federal and state. It's interesting how America is set up. You have your federal government, which is what Trump is running, but you also have individual state legislations that each have a certain amount of autonomy and independence depending. A perfect example of this would be back in the 1800s when the 14th Amendment came in after the American Civil War. It was the 14th Amendment that said that ex-slaves are now citizens of the U.S. They said if you were born here, you're a citizen. And so that's how they made slaves from slaves to people, to citizens. But what it didn't do was give everybody the right to vote. And what happened is that some women took it to the Supreme Court and said, excuse me, but we're citizens, we'd like to vote. And that's where the Supreme Court decided, okay, the 14th Amendment decides who's a citizen, but it doesn't decide who gets to vote. And they left that at the state level at the time. So some states were like, yeah, as women, you can vote here. And other states were like, no, you can't vote here as a woman. So you see that you've got these, and that's all interpretation. That's all constitutional interpretation. So here we've got a state, a blue state, Minnesota, being given federal money and then allocating that out to social programs. And now the federal government has stopped all that money going to Minnesota, going, we don't trust how you're spending it. And so we've got a real issue here. So what we have is a murder in broad daylight filmed from multiple angles of an innocent American woman who was shot by an ICE officer who didn't like being embarrassed on film, as far as we can tell. Immediately afterwards, Vance comes out and says that he has absolute immunity, that he will not be prosecuted. You have Trump coming out, calling her a terrorist. He called her a domestic terrorist for what she was doing. The last words that she said to him were, I'm not angry with you. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't violent. She was a mom. And she got killed, but he just shot at her. And he's seemingly going to be getting away with it because even though Minnesota would like to be able to investigate this crime and prosecute it, what the federal government did, and this is again the difference between state and federal government, is they sent in 2,000 officers. They've taken possession of her car. They've taken possession of the murder weapon. They basically have all of the evidence. So Minnesotans cannot investigate this as a crime. There could still be some civil action in civil court. There's been a huge amount of money. They've raised about $1.5 million for this poor woman and her family. Her wife was right there, witnessed the whole thing. It was absolutely horrific, but we are now seeing this weekend hundreds of protests all across the states about ICE. But with this, this, if anything, solidifies that ICE is sort of serving a similar purpose to what the SS was in Nazi Germany. Its mandate might be slightly different in terms of, we need to get what we see as aliens out of our country, versus the SS were there to root out those that they did not feel were German anymore, i.e. Jewish people and Romanies and travelers and just anyone that they didn't like, political dissidents. But ultimately it's the same. It's a private army of the administration that gets to do whatever it wants to do. And people keep talking about laws. I saw someone saying, well, freedom of speech. You have freedom of speech here. You get to say whatever you want. You don't. You don't. Like, I'm amazed at people who still think that there are laws that are going to protect them in the US. I saw an entire reel about a woman who said that she was sent an email saying that she was going to be deported because she is Asian American. So she is born and bred in America, but she herself is Asian. And someone wrote her a nasty email saying, you need to, Trump's going to get you out and send you back to where you came from. And she's like, I came from Chicago. And she then started listing all the laws that were going to protect her and how everyone has a right to due process. We've already seen that due process isn't happening. And it isn't happening for those that are on, immigration papers one way or the other. And it now clearly isn't even happening for American citizens, because it is unlikely that her death is ever going to be properly investigated or, I don't want to say avenged, but that justice is going to be met, because it is very clear to everyone that he did not have reason to shoot and that it was not in self-defense. And even if it were because he was about to get run over, we already know that there's precedence in American law that states that if you as a law officer put yourself into a position where you need to fire in self-defense, then that is not a justifiable defense for the crime that you've committed. In other words, by walking in front of the car, by walking around the car, by threatening her, by making her feel like she was being aggressed, he basically eradicated his self-defense motive.